Charlie, what's in main content? I did it, but I ain't yes, you say what you bema, what you only pabako, what you're about, what you mean, you nainty, pimpin' and na, what your mammy, Anna, Tamale, Pantama, Ninkranina, Montuma Bofis and Yaman, I'm born a Quaman and Yamana Domara, I butcher that bravo, your bonny say, Wallen to Wallensa, Mopenny sing, Kiana Sepofano, or Tontiaka Johnson.
Hello and welcome. That was Blitz the Ambassador. Our government is separating families. Yes, they are putting kids in cages. I've been talking about getting to the root causes of this immigration issue for years. I was talking about it back in 2006 on the campaign trail as a third-party candidate for Congress in Oregon. We need to get to the root causes of the immigration issue. No, it's not about people taking your jobs. These immigrants have come here to survive, to provide for their families. For the most part, they're doing jobs that Americans would be unwilling to take. But it takes a radical perspective to solve this issue. Yeah, I said it, radical, which comes from the Latin root radix, meaning root. We have to get to the root of the issue. What happened after NAFTA went into effect in the mid-1990s? Undocumented immigration doubled. It doubled. What happened as a result of the U.S. supporting right-wing factions and death squads in Nicaragua and El Salvador to overthrow governments that were making substantial progress in improving the quality of life for its people? Some years ago, I was talking to a government official from Jamaica, and he expressed to me that Washington would often tell him, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You know, the old Protestant work ethic. They would respond and say, okay, we're going to do this or that. Washington would answer, you can't do that. That's too social. I always remember an ambassador from a Caribbean nation telling me, Paul, we, the countries in the Caribbean, we all wish we were Cuba. What does it matter if you have a 24-hour shopping mall in a country if the vast majority of the population can't afford to shop there? And half the children under 5 are anemic due to malnutrition. Parents want safety, good education, good nutrition, and good health care for their families. Once everybody has that, then maybe we can talk about having a choice between 3 different brands of jeans. Until then, it's an exercise in exploitation. And that is the root of the issue when it comes to immigration. Washington meddling in the affairs of other countries for the sake of U.S. business interests and helping to destabilize anything that runs contrary to that aim. The same can be said for the history of European colonialism and their immigration debate. NATO bombed Libya for 7 months, violating the mandate of Resolution 1973. They bombed population centers. We saw many children being dug out of the rubble, killed by U.S. and NATO bombs. The country was sent into chaos. ISIS took a third of the country. Libya is still in chaos. The Iraq War, Western meddling in Syria, secret ops, arming factions, pouring fuel on the flames. If you are interested in the details, read my book, Smokescreen. But the point is, whether it is through economic measures like NAFTA or a military force, the U.S. and the West have destabilized countries, supporting some of the most ruthless people who call themselves leaders. And, ironically, then these countries complain when people from the target countries show up on their doorstep, trying to survive. Most people would rather stay in their own country, where they speak the language and have friends and family. You don't risk death jumping onto trains, walking through a desert, crawling through miles of sewage or floating for days on a raft without drinkable water. You don't do that for fun. You don't do that for fun. You do that because where you came from is so bad, it is worth the risk. By the way, do you notice how the mass media never talks about the lack of democracies in these little oil kingdoms in the Gulf? We know that they hardly ever criticize Saudi Arabia. We know why that is. We sell the Saudis billions of dollars of weapons so they can massacre the Yemenis. But it's always the same talking points. Cuba, Venezuela, Russia. Washington doesn't care about democracy for people. It cares about freedom for U.S. business to operate. You can run a little oil kingdom and hang people upside down in a dungeon if they criticize the government, and the Washington establishment and the U.S. mass media won't utter a word. But oh boy, nationalize your industry, do some wealth redistribution, you will end up on Washington's regime change list. So the root of this U.S. immigration issue has to do with Washington's policies toward Latin America. As far as the people who are already here, I see them as bringing culture, diversity, talents, and making our country much better. The International Law Education Group is dedicated to the democratization of education in the areas of international organizations and public international law.